Hello, we are live with SEO Collective Australia. So awesome to see you here. My name is Nik Ranger, and I am joined with a fantastic board of wonderful experts here today. So on with me here, I've got Saijo George, Peter Mead, and Dixon Jones. Woo, 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 woo.
Hey, hey.
Hey.
We've got a brand new name as well. So welcome to the SEO Collective, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm honored to be on the first of a new brand.
Happy to have you here, Matt.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you. Of course, I'll just go through a little bit of an introduction. If you are new here, hi and welcome. This is SEO Collective. We are here based in Melbourne, but of course we are here with the ethos of going out there, helping people, and pretty much like blowing our time to just answer your questions without any fear of like paywall or hopefully some misinformation as well. So really love that. We've got Peter Machinkovich, we've got Gabe Grossman here. It's awesome to see you guys. Peter, of course, Peter Mead is the godfather of SEO, and of course Saijo George is the amazing guy who is behind TDLR Marketing newsletter. If you haven't subscribed, it is awesome. Really great cutting edge updates right through to your email. Not sponsored, but we just really love that you're out there just trying to help people as much as you can.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I'll move on to our wonderful guest, Dixon Jones. Now, for a lot of you who have, I can see logged on, Dixon is a man that needs very few introductions. But yeah, look, you're one of the first marketers really out there. I guess, what do you sort of like call yourself the old guard in the industry?
True. Yeah, I started properly. I set up my first agency in 1999. I kind of learned a little bit on using Front Page 98. I tried to get 95 to work, but it didn't work. Front Page 95 it never worked. So yeah, I've never been a very good programmer or anything like that, but the advantage of being first is that you just hang around forever and ever and ever, and you can't get rid of me. So
The best thing about
yeah, so about a decade running an agency, then got involved with the majestic.com, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. So that was pretty much Alex in his front room when I started with that, and did that for about a decade. Pulled back a little bit. I'm still flying the flag. I mean, why wouldn't you, really? Still sort of talking up Majestic and links in general. But a few years ago, then I pulled back from the day-to-day. It was getting too big for my little mind. So I went back, and this French programmer called Fred Laurent approached me and said, "Hey, I've been doing this thing around entities," and I thought, you know what? I've been talking about entities and topics for about 5 years. I should really get off my bum and absolutely understand it properly. And then ended up investing in that, and it turns out they needed a CEO. So I'm the cheap CEO because I'm a cheap investor. So that's me, really.
Awesome.
So inlinks.net is my new thing, and so it's all going quite well, hopefully.
Could you give us a bit of intro, for those who don't know Inlinks, on what it does?
Sure. So Inlinks does three things. But all of them are based on the fundamentals of firstly understanding a corpus of text in topics or entities. So it'll read anything you put in front of it, and it'll run two natural language processing algorithms. It'll run Google's API, but it also runs our own, which is much more aggressive. So if you've got 2,000 words of text, you go through Google's and it'll come up with, 10 topics that it's about. Ours will probably come up with 100 topics that it's about, because it's much more aggressive. And so it's going to bring out this sort of knowledge graph of entities. And for us, an entity is anything that relates back usually to a Wikipedia article. So it doesn't have to be, but it's usually a Wikipedia article, because we use that as an interesting master knowledge graph, because one, it's open source, two, it's multilingual, and three, it's free. So, well, open source and free. So we can call on that. But then we've built our own knowledge graph on top of that. So now we have our own knowledge graph, but we still use Wikipedia to help educate our own systems. And then we have a person every day who's playing with that as well. So we're kind of categorizing Wikipedia as well. So when you've got the topic of engine, whether that's in the context of marketing technology, a search engine, or whether it's in the context of automobile, we know what it's in because of the other topics that are around it as well. So we've got this contextual analysis of any bit of text. We can then do three things with that. The first is that we can automatically build schema, about schema, which is quite an uncommon schema unless you're going to do it very manually, because you could sit there and you've got to go through and say, this is about this entity here, and this entity here is the same as this page over here. And so we can write those on the fly. And then we do ask for a human to get involved at that point, because AI makes mistakes, and we kind of want to make sure there's a human being, as said, this page is the page about search engine optimization or Tower Bridge or whatever it may be. And once we've done that, we can then find all of the other mentions of that concept on the web and link them through, on a website and link them through. So we do the internal linking, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And then the other thing that we can do is we can build another knowledge graph of all of the topics that are in the top 10 web pages for any keywords. So we build a knowledge graph of the competitor content, compare it to the page that you're saying is about this thing, and we can see all the topics that are missing and give you this gap analysis, which we then combine with a sort of editor and stuff and say, right, these are the things you need to talk about, or these are the questions that are missing, that you really need to answer for the user. So yes, it's an SEO tool based on entities from the ground up, really.
Nice.
It is just awesome. No, not at all. Look, like a lot of us have either played around with it or are just super fascinated about the mechanism behind it. And I think, you're not only you're uncommonly kind, but you're also very humble, because InLinks, of course, is search technology of the year, and it's really
it did in the UK, and I mean, the reason I'm humble is because I just thank you very much, but I get on the shoulders of geniuses with a Majestic and at InLinks. My only strategy in life, by the way, hello Robert, there's shout out to all the Dixons out there. My only success in life is jumping on the back of giants. So make sure that the programmer in your organization has more shares than you do, and you won't lose your programmer. It's that simple, really. So, that's my main game in life. So the reason I'm humble is because I'm just the front guy for these technologies usually. I might be smart enough to get on the bandwagon at the right time. That's probably my second superhero skill.
I mean, right time, right place, but also, right person. I mean, you've got a degree in math, and the things that you understand about this, I think, is just a little bit more like, anyway, I'm not gonna keep on that.
Most of us are struggling to understand the page rank algorithm. And,
that bit I know inside out. Absolutely, yeah. If anybody hasn't seen my YouTube video on the PageRank algorithm, you will understand the PageRank algorithm after that. That's the only good YouTube video I ever did.
Yeah, we'll have to get that link and put it into the show notes in the description below. And
cool.
I'm just going to maybe just do a really quick little plug. Look, this is SEO Collective. If you haven't clicked subscribe, please do so, and hit the notification bell every time we go through and launch a new video. Look, this is the first Tuesday of every month. We will be doing these. So be a part of the fun. All right.
So for those who are not familiar, SEO Meetup has changed to the SEO Collective. So this is the new name going forward. So yeah.
And what a nice little segue for you, Saijo. Let's have a look at the news. So while Saijo is just getting that up and ready, just a little bit of housekeeping. Just the format of these webinars is obviously we have a bit of a chat. We say hello to the keynote speaker, and then we go through some news. And then, of course, around about, we'll cap it sort of at 6:30, from 6:30 to say roughly around about 7. The floor is all yours, Dixon, to be able to go through and have a chat about internal links, and then we open up the floor for questions. So while we're talking and sort of going through it, if you've got really great questions about internal links, don't wait. Just post them now. We'll collect all of them, and we'll be answering them at the end of all of this. So thanks, Saijo. Without further ado, let's have a look at what's going on in search.
Yeah, so a few good things that happened. I think one, there is a new search engine that's coming out called Neva. It's two people from Google kind of jumped out, and they're kind of doing their own search engine. One of the things that kind of sets this apart is it is a search engine that you have to pay for. And it's only in the US right now, but the eventual plan is they'll kind of expand into all the different markets. And right now it's free for 3 months. So if you're in the US, you can try it and see how it kind of works for you. And another people who are doing a search engine is Brave. Their beta version is live now, and it's actually not too bad. I tried it out, and they do have things like knowledge graph, rich results, the 10 blue links, and all that. And it's from the Brave browser team. So that's I thought it was a bit better than Bing. And recently Bing has been doing a lot of good things, but the first version of Brave is actually pretty good. So give that a try. And I'm sure most of you have heard that Ahrefs is kind of looking into bringing out a search engine of their own as well. So that is something that I think it's almost ready. I think the CEO tweeted out about a month ago saying that it's kind of progressing along nicely. So yeah, a lot of new search players, and obviously people are kind of saying Apple is kind of bringing out their own as well.
Yeah. So
yeah, a lot of new search engines that's coming out soon, I guess. So any thoughts about these from you guys?
I would love to get both your opinion, Peter and Dixon, about this, because again, you two have been in the game longer than most, and you've seen a lot.
Well, my brief opinion is absolutely the more search engines, the better. The more market share for everybody to get on. Plus the idea, I think Neva, I think it's definitely if the users are paying for the search engine rather than the advertisers paying for the search engine, it certainly does change the motivations of the creators of those search algorithms, I believe. But it all remains to be seen. Of course, before Google, there was a lot of other random different kinds of search engines, which all seem to still work okay in their time. But of course, we don't have much to compare them to now, other than, we're really just looking at what do you think? What's Dixon?
Well, I think there's always been a need, I think, for a pay as you go or pay to use search engine. I think that should have always been there. I read when COVID came along, I just stopped reading the news or watching the news, because every story was about why I should commit suicide tomorrow, and it was just not a good feel. So I just stopped it all and started paying for The Economist. I just read The Economist every morning, and that's it. And so and that's a paid system, although the COVID stuff is free for The Economist. But so I think there is a need for a paid search engine, and a demand out there, and that's good. Majestic, by the way, have always had a search engine. So if you type in keywords instead of a URL into Majestic when you're logged in, then you're going to get a set of results. It's kind of different. It's not really designed to be anything that competes, but it's been there for years, and it's kind of interesting to see sometimes some of the things in there. But it's interesting that there's more new search engines coming out. That's great. What I think is Google's competitor really still is Facebook and that people getting recommendations from other people. So social networks are now turning into a kind of search engine of their own. If I want to have a good meal tonight, I don't necessarily go to Google. I go to my Facebook group and say, where's a good place to have a pizza or whatever. And so I think that still is the underlying challenge for Google, is not new search engines coming on board, although a new search engine could topple Google at any time. But I suspect they've got some other money making machines in their arsenal there anyway, so they'll be all right.
Yeah. So
I think,
I'm kind of more excited about to see what Apple would kind of come out with. So
that would be true. That would be great. They will fight.
Yeah, so they have a really good chance to come up with something good, I guess.
I would have thought that Google are only going to fight within their ecosystem, though. So if you don't have an Apple device, they won't care. They won't be trying to, well, maybe they'll try and get Safari onto everybody's system, like Google's trying to get Chrome onto every single system.
Yeah.
But I would have thought that they're mostly going to try and keep their loyal Apple users in their loyal Apple environment. And that's the main focus of the search engine.
Excellent. So kind of moving on into other things. GitHub recently previewed a tool called an AI tool called Copilot, which can using AI create code snippets for you. Again, I'm not a programmer, but looking at the GIFs and how excited people were and scared people were, it was an interesting little development. So did any of you get a chance to look at it?
I'm not a coder, but that scares the hell out of me. I mean, the AI text is incredible. So
it's really good.
The change in the code is very scary, really. Interesting.
So it's kind of like when the GDP3 tools came out to kind of generate text. Initially it was good, but once you kind of start feeding it things, it gets really, really good, and it writes content so well. You just need to kind of nudge it in the right direction. And something similar is kind of coming out for all industries, I guess. Now it's coming out for coding, and I'm pretty sure eventually it'll kind of start replacing all these different things that people do.
Peter says it's got a lot of copyright issues, I see, which it probably has. But if it's using GitHub's repository of open source code, then probably not as much as it needs. Isn't most of code on GitHub open source? At least the stuff you can see.
I think you can specify the license, so it doesn't all have to be open source, I think.
Okay. So, but yeah, I guess if it's copying somebody else's code, that's pretty bad.
Well, it depends on whose code it's
so
copying.
We'll have to kind of see how it kind of pans out.
Yeah. That's super interesting.
I mean, if it's at some point, somebody's just going to sue everybody that makes these things, aren't they? There's going to be court cases on these things, but presumably not until they get big enough to sue.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So what's next? So a lot of changes happening.
Actually, that Copilot. One thing about that, going back to Peter's point about Copilot, and okay, if there's copyright issues with Copilot, it won't really matter because something else will come along that has fixed the copyright problem, and we'll do the same thing. So yeah, now it's here to stay. Automated, say a few things and it writes the code for you. Is here to stay. That's it. It's object oriented programming to a new extreme, I think. So
yeah, we'll have to kind of see how it kind of plays out, I think, in the real world, but it's definitely scary and interesting at the same time. So a lot of changes happening in Google shopping kind of world. So about a few months ago, they announced Shopping Graph, and now you can see all these different search variations that they're trying. When you search for business, it's automatically pulling in the store rating from Google, the paid Google review program. So the store rating kind of starts coming up in the actual search results. So that is something new that they were testing a couple of weeks ago. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that pop up on, I think on Twitter. But that's like only with Shopify at the moment. Like as like
No, it's not with
no.
Shopify. It's no. It's anybody who is enrolled into, how Google has this review program. So like, when you buy anything through Google Shopping and all that, you get a review thing that comes up. I can't remember the name of that program off the top of my head, but it's anybody who's kind of enrolled into that. And I think you need to have a minimum score of 3.5 or something. About that, they'll
Okay.
start showing that. Like when you're in that test, it will show you like, if you're searching for, I don't know, iPhones, for example, it will show you stores like JB Hi-Fi, like, with like customer rating of 4.5. It might show you like, Good Guys with customer rating of 3.5. So it's not the actual product rating, but a rating for the actual store that's given by customers. So like, it can like, I think it can influence click-through rates, especially when you're kind of searching for a head term and you get to see like different stores with different ratings. So that's, it's a test. So we don't know if it's going to roll out, but like, it's definitely something that's, I'm guessing that will kind of push for, especially like, with the shopping graph kind of engine that they're building out. So I think all these kind of plays into that.
Yeah, I think that'll be really, really interesting, especially like when it comes to like your catches, your Temple and Webster's, like basically marketplaces that really rely on just kind of being there, like in the SERPs, like to have that vantage point. Like if there's a little bit more of like a rating for sellers and things like that, that might impact them a lot more, because I think like they've got like I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it rolls out.
Yeah, so the interesting thing was, I think it was Brody who tweeted out like there was a store with rating of 1.8 or 2 point something. And like according to Google's documentation, they said like, you need to have rating about 3 something, I think it was. But it was also pulling in like lower ratings. And I'm pretty sure like, when you see a rating of 2.5 along with few others that are rating 5 and 4, like chances are people will click less on that. Again, this is just my theory, but like, I wouldn't click on that. So
no, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I wonder if this is sort of gonna, like be shown a lot less, but maybe have implications of like if you have a certain score below 3.5, you might not sort of qualify for certain like features and things like that later down the track.
Yeah, could be.
Interesting.
Yep. And so Google recently updated their guides on HTTP status codes, redirects, and all that. And an interesting bit of thing in there was apparently Google can recognize, like, if you mention that like this page has been redirected somewhere else, and like just point that like, redirected link as a text, Google can still recognize that and pass the value. So they called it like a crypto redirect. I don't know why, but like apparently that is something Google can pick up on. So that was new to me. I didn't know. Like I would still like, redirect the old fashioned way, but like if there are platform limitations and stuff, that is an interesting thing to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That implies that Google is really making more use of citations than perhaps we understand, really. And if you just mention a website without a link associated with it, then it may make that connection much more readily than we perhaps think.
Yeah. So, but that's something that's kind of hard to kind of test and prove, because but
true.
like I would imagine like that is something that Google has like already worked on and is in place. Like, again, it's hard to kind of prove, so we'll never know, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. Well, it is in a way, and it isn't, because of course, if you put in the word Nike, Google knows that it means Nike Inc., and it's kind of knows everything about that. So and knows what the website is for all of that. So again, if you think about Google thinking in entities, then just seeing a a .com or a .com.au and a without a link, it still makes it associate with that entity or with that topic or with that, in this case, website. So I think perhaps it's easier for Google than we once thought. Now that Google's thinking in entities. I may be talking a little bit out of my mind rather than actual physical testing on this.
Yeah. To be honest, I haven't had a look at it, but it's essentially like a crypto redirect is essentially a redirect, but with a little bit of text to explain it a little bit more. Is that what it is?
I'm sorry, Nick, what was that?
The crypto redirect. It's essentially like a redirect, but with a little bit of text to contextualize why that redirect is there and in place. Is that correct?
Yeah, so basically from what I understand, it's basically saying this page has moved somewhere else, and the anchor text for that will be the link that you kind of send out to the place that you want this page to be redirected to.
Okay.
So even without physical redirect being in place, it can still, Google can kind of understand that this page is supposed to redirect to that link that you've kind of mentioned there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't kind of think Google would kind of do that, but apparently that Google can pick up on that signal. And how effectively, it's kind of hard to say, because you could have user-generated content where I could just add a link and say, hey, this page is supposed to be redirected to my homepage, right? And if Google kind of passes the value from that page to my page, then so there could be a lot of things like that in there, but it's interesting to know.
Yeah, I'm just thinking what would be the use case of using a crypto redirect?
So there could be REST platforms that don't allow you to add redirects, for example. So, and you kind of still want to do that. So maybe everything is kind of locked up on a closed platform, I don't know, some custom CMS that somebody has developed, for example. So where you are not you don't have the capability
I see.
to add
So basically, it goes
right.
to it. So you've got a link through to a 200 response that just says on the screen, this page is now over here. And so basically the only thing on the page is a link to another page. So Google's sitting there saying, well, let's cut out the middleman. Okay, I see. Yeah. So it's the actual landing page itself that's now basically giving the signal. That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's interesting that Peter's sort of Peter Michinkovich has also written here that it's like a Google selected canonical, which I would imagine it would imply that it can basically also ignore that as well.
Yeah, so that's the thing. In the real world, it's kind of hard to. It doesn't always work as expected, I guess. So we'll have to kind of troubleshoot that as well when things don't work exactly as it should.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. So I think the next piece.
I look forward to applying it maybe one day and see what happens. Yeah.
So let me know what happens once you get a shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Essentially, just it's probably got something to do with the topic that Dixon's going to get into, but just load up your website with a bunch of links and see if it works. It doesn't sound like much different to what people are doing already, right?
Yeah, that's true.
All right. So this one is there was this guy who kind of put out a blog post saying Google thinks he's a serial killer because he's got the same name as a serial killer from the country that he was in. And Google just lifted his photo from some other place and slapped it onto a knowledge panel of the serial killer. So when people search for this guy, it was showing the panel for the serial killer with details about when he was born and all that, but with this other guy's photo in there.
I think I saw that also with I can't remember who tweeted it out, but they replaced Neil Patel's face.
Yeah,
with
Bill
some
Hartzer
other...
did that. Bill Hartzer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bill Hartzer's knowledge graph has got underneath. You may also know, or people like Bill Hartzer are, and they got completely the wrong Neil Patel in there. Yeah, saw that one.
Or maybe a very old photo. I don't know.
No, it wasn't. No. I've met Neil Patel. He does exist, by the way. I have met him.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I
was just,
sorry.
I was being a bit cheeky because that one he had hair. So yeah.
So I think Google has been making quite a lot of assumptions with matching pictures to people. I mean, I have the same problem as well. So Dixon Jones was also a group of architects in the UK. So basically, and they designed the Royal Opera House in Gullet. So basically, much bigger than me, But Google has a lot of trouble. When it comes up with my knowledge graph profile, getting the right photographs in there, and it doesn't help Google now that Dixon Jones, the architects, have gone bust. So it's getting even more confused now over time. But so they need to work on that. That confidence level before they put a picture up saying that this person is the picture of a serial killer. I think that's
something like that can happen. Exactly. So, like this guy was like he didn't really care about it too much. I guess he was like laughing about it and saying this, but that could be scenarios where it can be really, really bad as well.
You're going to get picked up on a street, aren't you? There's going to be somebody's going to pick that up, put it in the front page of a newspaper, saying this is the person that is the serial killer. Then they're going to say that person lives next to me, and that's it. Your whole world has fallen apart for you. It doesn't take
you're just scrolling on Tinder, and you're like, hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on.
I think we should really expect a bit more from Google, to be honest. Simply because we're all paying for it. We are the product, and we're paying for this through our own attention, through the attention economy, and we're sort of getting fed these mistakes, which I don't think are really good enough, especially that kind of thing where it could possibly have a really negative impact on somebody's life. So I think that's.
I would imagine it's like a very complex problem to solve. I understand that Google must be throwing a lot of money at it and all that, but still, if they couldn't figure it out for so long, I'm guessing there are so much things that needs to be worked out on that. And it's not like they're doing it on purpose. They're kind of trying out different things and kind of working out what's best.
You're very kind.
Not for the user, but for their own bottom line and all that. But still, I don't think it's a problem that is that easy to solve. Kind of like the fake news problem. It's there, everybody's trying, but I don't think it's something that can be easily solved.
Well, the solution really is basically getting every person on the planet their own, knowledge graph ID number, isn't it? That's their solution. No.
I'm sure the ad business will love it too.
Google Plus was going to be that, wasn't it?
Well, Google Plus is gone. Is forgotten but not gone. I think. I reckon they're still tracking as much as they can.
They're kind of starting out something for journalists. There was other bit of news a couple of weeks ago, saying journalists will have their own kind of panel. So if you're a popular journalist, when you kind of bring up an article that they've written, it'll kind of show a panel with references, third-party articles, and other publication they write for and stuff like that. So I think the knowledge or Google Plus is kind of existing for certain people. And I think even the knowledge panel that people have are kind of like a Google Plus power-up, right?
Yeah, I'm just aware of the time, actually. That we're, how's the news going, Saijo? Will we let Dixon
keep
start
going,
his presentation
soon? I can't wait to get into that. So definitely jump onto that.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's a really,
You
really
can
great
always
place
read
to
the news on
bookend it.
TLDR marketing, by the way. So,
Exactly. Yep. At a local SERP near you. But let's give the floor to Dixon Jones. I'm really, really excited to see what you have to share today. So,
okay.
yeah.
Well, thank you. Let's find out. I have a funny feeling that the audience here is pretty. Have I got the right screen? Can you just see a big sign saying, yeah, okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so on one level, internal linking is a pretty simple thing to talk about. So I got to be a little bit careful here because I know that the audience is pretty bright, and I got to avoid teaching everybody to suck eggs. But hopefully, there's just a couple of points that I want to get through that are going to be useful. So the first thing I wanted to demonstrate is the undeniable value or ROI of internal linking. I think it's not always easy to explain to customers why it's important to do this stuff, and we've got a really good case study. And then the underlying thing that's important out of internal linking is the difference between linking keywords and linking topics. So I'm going to go into that a fair amount because when you start to scale internal linking, it's going to make a huge difference. Otherwise, you're going to get exact match anchor text all over the place. And then really when it comes to internal linking, there's two basic types of internal linking, aren't there? There's really the navigation structure and your footer links. I've ignored the footer links, and then also the body text as well. So the body text links, which is, I guess, the important bit. Although, is it? That's an interesting question in itself. Mathematically, PageRank didn't really care where it was on the page. As things have moved on, and we've got sort of reasonable surfer models, things may have changed. But I would say that quite a lot of the time, people click on navigation more than they click on the body text links anyway. So it's not always clear which links are the most important on a page. So anyway, let's jump on quick and see where we go. If my machine is working, I've gone for this high-tech PowerPoint called MindWeister, which is a mind map, which is just an alternative way of doing presentations. So anyway, this is the case study that we did, and it wasn't actually me. I don't know if you know Lucas Zeleny. He's a Polish SEO that runs SEO London. He's a prolific speaker, and he's a big user of our tool. But this was a case study that he did where he had a fairly substantial website, and it was doing around about 25,000 visitors a month on organic, according to SEMrush. And he sorted out the internal linking and some schema, no content changes, and the traffic popped up at 85, 90,000 for a month, and then sort of came back to around about 63, 64. So it went from 25 to 64,000 visitors a month in organic, which I would say is pretty significant. I mean, that's a big change. So if you want to have a look at it, you should. It's on the InLinks website. Go onto the blog and look at case studies, and you'll see it. But it was in the automotive sector. And he had an increase of, apart from that short blip, it was about 139% increase in organic traffic, or more than 1,000 visitors a day. But the important thing here is that we valued that traffic and put the value of the organic traffic at over $50,000 a month. That's US dollars. And so the cost of doing this was peanuts compared to that. It was a few dollars. Well, a few $100s, and the whole thing was sorted out. And the only thing that he did to change things in his argument is internal links, and also he put about schema in there as well. So basically, a combination of helping Google understand what each page is about, and then internal links. So no body content changes at all to get that kind of impact. So we put that into a nice little PDF to be able to download and show to people, customers and things, to show the power. And I think it's worth having a look at, just to convince people, because there's an awful lot of people out there that know that internal links seems like a good idea, but they just don't get round to it. Basically, it's almost too simple for people to do. They want to go for the server level, stuff and have an argument with a web developer over a mod rewrite or something like that. But when it comes to internal linking, what I wanted to really talk about is the difference between linking keywords and linking entities. So as you're going through content and you're trying to link between pages, there's a tendency for us to start linking keywords. And there were tools, was it Link Whisper, or is Link Whisper maybe a more modern one? But there's a WordPress tool that will just find any keyword and it will find and mention that keyword and link them through to the page that you want. And I wanted to just show you some of the problems with that approach, really. And I was going to use bridges as an example. So we've got here the concept of bridges. If you had a site on bridges, then maybe you want the homepage of the site to be about bridges, or maybe you've got we talked about Dixon Jones, the architect. So maybe you've got a section on bridges, you've got a section on skyscrapers, and you've got a section on underground, on tunnels or something like that. So when you get to the bridges category, really, then maybe you want any mention of the word bridge to link through to the bridge category. But the problem is that then you're taking that link away from this is Tower Bridge. So now you've taken you talk about Tower Bridge and then you link the word bridge through to the category of bridge page. That's a bit of a problem because now you haven't got any links going through to the Tower Bridge page. And the challenge with keywords, or one of the big challenges with keywords, is that keywords don't mean anything until you put them with other keywords. So if you've got Tower Bridge and then you've got the Golden Gate Bridge, you've now got two completely distinct bridges, which are entities in their own right. And if you start to take the word bridge and send it off to one page, then you're actually taking that out of the Golden Gate Bridge and potentially taking half of the Golden Gate Bridge word and breaking it up into two different concepts, Golden Gate and bridge, and linking bridge through to the bridges page. And you've lost some relevance for the concept of Tower Bridge. And then you go to Sydney Harbour Bridge, and the same problem starts to apply. So of course, when you talk about Sydney Harbour Bridge, then that should link through to the Sydney Harbour Bridge page. When you talk about Tower Bridge, it should link through to the Tower Bridge page. But when it comes to the concept of bridge, you really need to be careful to try not to pull an entity into two different parts, to split it apart, because you're going to lose your relevance when it comes to more specific kind of entities. And we've seen, at least anecdotally, that it's easier. Well, we all know that the long tail is easier than the short tail, so it's easier to become an expert on Tower Bridge and Sydney Harbour Bridge and Golden Gate Bridge than it is to become an expert on bridges. But once you're an expert on those three concepts, and Google knows that they're all about bridges, then it's much easier to become the expert on bridges. So here's the same thing with the concept of engine. And another reason why keywords is a really bad idea to do your linking. So if you've got the word engine in a sentence that mentions search engine, of course, linking that through to an automobile page is going to be a bad idea. A search engine has nothing to do with an automobile, and yet if you've used the concept of an engine and you're linking that through to an automobile page, you're breaking up the meaning, because search engine in itself is an entity, is a concept. And taking engine out of context in that word is going to be damaging to any machine learning capability. So essentially, keyword linking is bad because of four things. Firstly, well, it misses spelling variations. That's one thing that keyword linking is bad for. If you're trying to scale your internal linking, the word talking and talkable are all the same thing. Talkable, that's not even a word, is it? Sorry. So you've got variations of a keyword, and you've either got to guess or write all of those together and make sure they all collectively go to the same thing, or you've got to think a little bit more laterally, because it doesn't deal with synonyms either. So you've got two words that mean the same thing, and if you've only guessed on one of them, then all the other ones are wasted. The second is it looks spammy. It looks spammy if you've suddenly got, every time you mention holidays in Sydney, linking through to the Sydney holiday page, and that's the only link that you've got on the system. So you could get penalized. They did do it once. I know Google did start penalizing internal links, but they relaxed that quite a lot. I think they just don't count them so much. I mean, back in the Penguin penalty days, they did start getting a bit nasty with it, but I don't think they really penalize internal links anchor text too much anymore, but they probably discount after a while, but you certainly could do. And most fundamentally, it's not meeting a needs met mentality. If you're thinking about your internal links in terms of manipulating Google, then you're not thinking about helping the user. So having Sydney Bridge page linking through to the Bridge page instead of talking about the Sydney Bridge page, you're not thinking about the entity behind the link, and whether the user is then going to land on a place that is going to tell them more about the thing that you're talking about right at this particular moment. So you're on one page as a user, you see a link in something to something you don't understand, you link through to it, it should tell you what it is that this thing is that they were reading. If it doesn't do that, it's not meeting a needs met mentality. Conversely, topic linking is great, and it's great for sometimes more reasons than we might think. But the first is that it does meet a needs met mentality. It really allows you to help the user get to understand your content faster, and that's the whole point, really. I would say with links, there's only two ways that people can get around the internet. They can type in www.yoursite.com or click on a link. So links are the only way that people travel. So whether it's got anchor text or whether it hasn't got anchor text, whether it's a picture, it doesn't matter. It's got to feed that person's ability to answer the question that they had in their mind as they were reading. It also, though, generates more links if you start thinking in topics, because if you've got lake and pond and different things that mean the same thing, and you can read a piece of content and understand the underlying entity, then any variation of that entity still comes back to that entity. So you can effectively generate a lot more links if you don't tie yourself down to exact mapped anchor text or keyword-based anchor text. And again, it focuses on the content as well. So it's sending all of that information about a particular entity to one page. And that helps Google to turn, I see it as turning your website from, a bundle of ideas into a star, where each of the topics that you're talking about are clearly seen in any machine learning algorithm. It can see that exactly where the authority within your website lies when talking about this particular idea or this particular topic. So it's focusing on the content and making the content align very, very effectively with topics and with entities. And that means that it's going to create topical authority pages. So you're going to have a page that is authoritative within the context of your website around a particular topic. Now, for some people, a topic could mean different things in different places. So horseshoe could mean something very different in a Lucky Charm shop than it does on a farm, for example. But it doesn't really matter, because as long as the site is talking sensibly around topics, then it's going to crystallize the context in which horseshoe is being used, just because of the other content that's on the site. And it also reduces cannibalization. Internal linking generally will reduce cannibalization. And this is one of the problems, particularly with niche websites, that I see, is that you've got 1,000 pages on lakes or 1,000 pages on bridges, and you kind of think I should be number one on bridges, and then you haven't really helped Google to understand where the bridge authority is or where the Tower Bridge authority is, and you've got a lot of pages that are about the same thing, and it forces you to make that decision. I need to have an authority page for each individual entity, because otherwise I've got 5 different pages that all mean the same thing, and I start linking to all of those 5 pages when the topic is essentially the same thing. So I've got cannibalization by not focusing all links to one place. So my 2 parts of linking are navigational links and topical links. And navigational links are interesting because when you start your website, it's an interesting question as to how you set out your website. And for a lot of businesses, it's very obvious. I mean, if you're regional, if you've got shops in all around Australia, then fine, you've got your store in Sydney and your store and you can do things geographically. But oftentimes content-driven sites, it's not so obvious. So if you can create a big hairy ass goal, and then you can build a knowledge graph of where you should be writing content. So what I've done here is I've taken a phrase, digital marketing books, and I've built a knowledge graph of all the content that's coming in. This is from InLinks. That's coming in, the top 10 web pages are talking about for the phrase digital marketing books, and then they're categorized out. So we've got within the marketing and advertising vertical, we've got things about marketing, digital marketing, and brand and search engine optimization. And so I could then use those as a navigational structure. And then in the sciences, I start putting psychology, evolution, and research. Sorry if this is all a bit small, but by doing this, I'm starting to start building my content around verticals that makes sense. So building your site around a topic graph or a knowledge graph of content that's already ranking for your big hairy marketing goal, a big hairy ass goal, then that will allow you to build an interesting navigational structure, which makes for a very interesting content plan, because it means that you can start on the inner ring. Well, these are your categories on the inner ring here, and then these are the things that you kind of want to start talking about. The green ones on the middle here are the ones that we've already written about, and then we've got the ones on the outside that we haven't written about within each category. So it's a very interesting way of building navigational links and building your content out, is to build a knowledge graph first of what the topics are being talked about in your big hairy goal. Oh, I've drilled down so you can see this, and it's too late now. I've gone past it. There we go. Okay, but then the last bit I want to talk about is body links, the important bit. So when you start connecting all those articles, and the reason it doesn't get done very much is that content writers have no idea what the rest of the content is on the website, so they don't know that there's a more important page about this particular content and that they need to link to it. And the important thing to remember here is that there can be only one target per topic, and that's because a link cannot go to 2 places. You cannot have a link that will link to page A and page B at the same time. That's just not how a link works. So you've got to be very, very careful to say, this is my page that is going to be the authority about this topic. You can have plenty of other pages that talk about that topic, and you can even link out to those pages if you want manually. But essentially, all of those topics have got to, all those other pages have got to defer to the one that is going to rank in the search engines. Another way to look at it is, if you've only got one page, one website on the internet, and you've got a search phrase, you've still got to choose one page on your website that is going to be at the top of that list. And so all links for that topic should defer to that page. And there are two methods to do that. The first is Excel or Google Sheets or whatever, which is to go through and read through all of your site and say, this is my source page, go through it. I've got a topic here. What's the topic? I've got to remember my topics and decide what they are. I then got to choose the anchor text and then have the URL that I'm going to link through, make a list of all of them, and make sure that you haven't got the topics cross-referencing and going to 2 different URLs. It's free, well, if you've got Excel, but it's quite laborious. However, this is why we built InLinks, basically, and this is the advert slide for InLinks. So sorry about that. So what we did was we said, that's a stupid way to do it. If we can read a page, and so this is SEMrush's website, so we can read a page and say, right, okay, this page here, we're going to make about the topic, the concept of backlinks. And we know it's about the concept of backlinks, and we're going to say this is about the backlink, then it can go through the rest of the web pages and have a look at other mentions of backlinks or other times that you've talked about it and automatically link it through. And what we do is we use JavaScript, a little line of JavaScript to manage all this. So it then injects the links on the page straight away. So you don't even have to go back to the developers each time. One line of JavaScript, and if you've got a WordPress header and footer plugin, you can put it in the footer. You can do it with Google Tag Manager as well. But essentially, we can then sit there and say, right, this page is about backlinks. This page is about search engine optimization. This page is about web tracking, and we can use SEMrush's own data to try and make sure that we get those matches right. We'll have read these pages anyway, so we'll know what topics are candidate topics to choose from. But essentially, they'll relate back to a Wikipedia article. So we set a target topic, and then everything will start to link through. So if I go to the SEO checklist page, we've made that the one about search engine optimization. And so then we've seen on the page about how to reverse image search on both desktops and mobile, I assume that says. Then we found a suitable anchor text that doesn't say search engine optimization, so it's search results, SEO focus. We got search engine optimization. So we got at least three different anchor texts, and then some variations around that as well. But they're all talking about the concept of search engine optimization, and it's got that in the body text. So we can then go and find that and see it and drill down. We've got a text of it, and then you can see it in context as well to make sure that it's sensible. If it isn't, you can delete it out and edit it as well. So this is our way of scaling internal linking, because it's done around concepts and ideas. It scales very, very quickly. You don't need to go and manually put every single link on the page, and you can edit it from within the back end as well. So some tips, just because I'm pretty much on time already. Some tips and pitfalls that I've got. Firstly, when it comes to internal linking, beware caps in URL links. I mean, Google's pretty good at getting over this now, but certainly Unix-based systems. Well, Twitter's a good example. You can put in any variation of twitter.com/Dixon_Jones, and it'll get to the same page with a 200 response. Theoretically, technically, those are all different URLs. And you have to rely on Google deciding that the canonical is default of one version of that URL. But beware that. I mean, try and get your capitalization consistent.
Seen that
also
hurting when it comes to a redirect. So people do a redirect on those URLs, and the case doesn't match, and boom, it's broken. So
that can happen as well. I mean, certainly if the server is a Windows server, then it picks it up and it's fine. But if it's a Unix server, then I don't know if it still doesn't, but I'm pretty sure capitalization matters, doesn't it? So and then again, canonicals versus redirections. If you can not have any redirect, it's better. If a redirection is still better than a canonical. And one of the reasons that a redirection is much better than a canonical is that a redirection forces the user to the right place, and a canonical just hopes that Google is going to pick something up. So a redirection is a much stronger signal than a canonical, and canonical is an optional signal, whereas a redirection is pretty much a no choice, whether you're a user or a search engine. One link between two pages is usually enough. And there's another problem with exact match anchor text as well, is that you can end up having loads of links on the same page with the exact match going through to the same page at the other end. But I recently we've seen really, one connection between two pages is enough for Google to make its decision. And if you have lots of varying anchor texts, then you might well be potentially confusing Google a little bit. We just find that one is fine. Another thing about the canonicals and redirects is the link counting dilemma. So many people are right now panicking about or saying, that the number of links is so important. But there is a huge number of dilemmas between how many links a page has. So if I take the example today of the crypto redirect that Saijo was talking about, if Google has picked up that this is a redirect, so you've got a page linking through to this crypto redirect page that goes through, and you've got 10 pages linking through to the crypto redirect page, and then this redirect page then links through to the end page. Is that one link to the end page, or is that 10 links to the end page? And there are so many different examples. And if you've got 2 links on a page going through to another page, is that one link from page A to page B, or is that 2 individual links that we should count separately? Because there's only 2 pages. If you count 2 pages separately, then that's a lot more hard drive space, because you've suddenly got a huge number of variations. And if you sit there and say, well, we're only going to count 1, well, the second one may have a completely different context to the first one. So it's not an easy question, counting links in its own right. So there's a link counting dilemma. And last thing, have a proper 404 page. Don't have a soft 404 page. It confuses the hell out of people. And the last thing really, I think, is SEOs have spent so much time hating JavaScript that they forgot that JavaScript can do some really bloody cool things for SEO. And when it comes to injecting links and schema and JSON LD, that's just the start of a very big iceberg. Google now, for some years, has been rendering the content as a user, more or less, before it passes it through into its indexer. So JavaScript now is pretty much sorted, and it can be very, very cool. And it means that nothing is set in stone. You can fix things on the JavaScript side, and you don't have to go back to the hard coding every single time. Hopefully, I got that around about right on the timing, Nick. that's my thoughts on internal linking.
That's honestly so awesome. I'm just going to basically echo what Peter Machinkovich wrote here. Like, so many awesome ideas bubbling up based on just, the 26 minutes of gold that you just shared there.
I'm glad. 26 minutes, that's bang on then. You said somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. Okay, I'm happy now, because it's early in the morning here. I haven't got time to figure out what I'm doing, so I'm glad I got that right.
To be honest, I would have.
They're not difficult ideas, though, is it? They're not difficult ideas. But they make a huge difference, or our research is showing that they're making a massive difference to sites. And you only got to go and look at the ones that we all know, the SEMrushes and the Mozzies and Encrawls and stuff, where in this country anyway, are all ranking really well right now. And their internal linking is stunning. Search Engine Journal and other ones, internal linking is stunning. And I think that that ability to help the user travel around is the key to it, and doing it by topics instead of keywords is such an important part of that problem. So,
yeah, 100%. So look, we didn't get a lot of questions, but at the same time,
I've got one.
I'm sure you do, Saijo. I've got some too.
Yeah.
I'll ask her.
I'm sure, people will have questions. So maybe, if you have questions, just drop that down in the comments, and we'll
add them in the chat. Yeah.
So what I was thinking about was, say, you've got a newspaper that writes about a lot of different topics that might have the same sort of name, I guess. So it might have XYZ that could be something in one context and something else in the other context, right? So when that sort of thing happens, how does Inlinks handle something like that?
So it's not so much how we handle it. I mean, I think we handle it really bloody well. And I'll tell you how we handle it. But we kind of see the world in a bit of a hierarchical order. So if you have your homepage of, you guys all heard of the Guardian over there. I'm going to take the Guardian. What's the biggest newspaper in Australia?
You can go with Guardian. That's fine.
Guardian's fine, right? I'll take the Guardian. So, Guardian, the homepage of the Guardian is about newspapers and news. It's news. That's what it is. It's news. That means that any pages within that really are also about news. You don't need to say So then you've got a section on automobile news. You don't need to say this is also about news, because the whole website is in the context of news. So this is about automobiles in the context of news. If you were, however, a Toyota or a Nissan, and you had a Nissan, and then you've got Nissan news, then that's news in the context of Nissan. But you could have automotive and then Nissan make Nissan huts. I don't know if they still make Nissan huts, but I assume Nissan huts were made by Nissan. And so you've got huts and you've got cars, and then you may have automobile news and you've got Nissan hut news. But it's the context of where it's coming from, because all of the pages around it are related to the larger concept. But it's unusual for you to have websites that are about very, very diverse topics, unless it's something like user-generated content, where there's so many things coming in, and those ones tend to rank really, really badly in search. They don't rank very well because they're not developing themes that Google can understand. But so we would suggest that you use that hierarchy by saying, right, I want to make every page as specific as possible without going wrong. So it's only the homepage of the guidance that's about news. All of the rest is not about news. It might be about news in context or something, but really, you know, all the other pages are about something else, and the context is already driven by the overall theme of the website. However, we do have the ability to set up topics. Silos, sorry. So you can sit there and say, if you've got a complicated website, an example of this might be Marriott. So you sit there and you say, right, you've got food. There's no point in doing food in the context of hotels. I want to do, you know, or takeaways in the context of hotels. I want to do context in the context of Marriott's in Sydney and Marriott's in San Francisco, because the food outlets have no relationship between Sydney and San Francisco, except Starbucks, which is everywhere. And so you would then possibly have silos, so that only the food outlet pages in San Francisco can only link to the pages within the San Francisco silo. So we can then you can then border those off. It's a kind of an advanced system. My preference, though, is to use context. So we also have another system that says you can say this page is about takeaways in the context of Sydney, and theoretically our system then will say, okay, you've got a page for takeaways over here, and we'll link to the takeaway page where we can, unless we see a specific page that's talking about Sydney and takeaways in the same place, and then it will link through to the page that's about takeaways with the context of Sydney on there. But you end up not getting very many. You end up getting not very many links to the finer grained system. Maybe that's our technology not working quite right, or maybe it's our own, you know, imagination that just because we're going to set something up in context we're going to get links. I don't know, but it's an easier way to set up. So you've got those two methodologies to answer your question.
Well, Dixon, can I ask, because you know, I mean, you know, thanks for explaining that, but I think there's you know, as a person sitting behind the computer screen, scratching their head and trying to figure out at what point where is the decision point to decide to use a silo or to decide to use the other entity related approach?
Well, we leave that.
That's literally going to be my question.
Well, I think
Yeah.
you have to be careful with tools to make sure that the tool doesn't the tail doesn't chase the dog or whatever, tail wagging dog kind of thing. The person has got to be in charge. So a better SEO is going to make a better decision on that than a new SEO. So we suggest don't use silos at all unless you really need to, and usually you would only use silos on a very big site that's got this kind of international kind of presence, or you know, pan American presence where everything's city based and things like that. I would urge people to really think about what they're doing if they're going to start setting up silos, and to the point at which I've put a video on YouTube. This is how you do it. Don't do it, but you know, do it. I mean, because the people that the people that are going to do it are going to do it regardless. So you know, they know that they want a silo. I think until you know that you want a silo, then probably steer away from it. my advice. But we always leave it in the. You've got to manually set up a silo.
Can I just have a very quick follow-up question to that?
You may.
Just without hogging the screen from the other presenters here, but certainly one of the things that comes to my mind is that, and I think maybe people could be confused about this, is there's been so much talk about things like topic clusters and this kind of siloing approach, especially made popular by HubSpot. Is this in? How does this relate? Does it relate to siloing, or is that?
Here's a challenge. It depends on how you imagine your definition of the word silo, isn't it? Really, and this is so much in SEO. In fact, entities. Google uses the word topics in all its documentation because it's friendlier for users. So it uses the concept of topics instead of entities. But of course, you don't know when it's talking about topics and not talking about entities. So it does its own blurring of ideas in that place. But for me, I mean, any internal linking should start to reduce as long as you don't start allowing 2 pages to be about the same topic, to be about the same underlying entity, then all internal linking through inlinks will start to reduce that cannibalization and will help Google to understand that the authority about this topic is over here and the authority about this topic is over here. The question is the definition of the topic, really. And so that's why we use Wikipedia as our black and white definition. If it's got a Wikipedia, that's not always perfect because there's sometimes several pages about the same thing on Wikipedia, certainly in different languages, but even within the same idea. So SEO and search engine optimization could be 2 different pages on Wikipedia, and someone hasn't figured out that that's a disambiguation problem. But to your point, I think that topic clustering, internal linking helps focus topic clustering. So it helps focus where the topic information is. You can use your navigational structure to also highlight, improve that. If you're lucky enough to be starting from scratch and you've got the luxury of writing out that navigational structure, I would say that moving forward, I would love to use the navigational structure approach that we have to hand now, rather than the stuff that we used to use in the past, which is probably separating services, products, and customer service or whatever. But topic clustering, internal linking basically does fix your topic clustering because it creates clusters of topics, and it also can differentiate out. We're getting more subtle, and this stuff isn't live yet, but we're getting more subtle about understanding topics semantically close to one topic in context. So if you've got bridge, then you've got Golden Gate Bridge, and you've got Sydney Harbour Bridge, and then you've got Sydney Harbour Bridge is associated with Sydney and sea and Australia, and Golden Gate Bridge is associated with Rust and Suspension Bridge and all these other bits and pieces. And so we can start to see that there's different things that are important within those different topic clusters, if you like, as you branch out from them. Did that answer your question? Probably not. I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, I think it was a good way actually of going broader and deeper into that whole. I know there's no simple way of answering that, but it really explained a lot more. I think that hopefully that does make more sense to people. We do have other questions. Do you want to maybe fire off some of these questions that are coming up, Nick, from our audience?
A shout out to my YouTube page, Chris. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's YouTube, I think it's youtube.com/inlinks. So there's an inlinks channel, and so there's a lot of things there which are how to use bits of the inlinks tool, but other bits around it are more conceptual. I'm not a very good YouTuber, to be honest with you, but the videos on there are not too bad. There's worse.
Yeah. I feel really bad because I've got my own questions and now I'm looking at the chat and being like,
Do you want me to go through those questions, Nick?
Gregor, Saijo, you want to ask the one from Gregor? Gregor's a long time SEO, the meetup member. Do you want to ask that one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So his question is, what about localized SEO where suburb is important? Do you need to keep including the suburb for every service if you're competing against a site with suburb in the URLs? So I'm guessing.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good question, and I think well, no and yes. So for the internal links, no, but for the schema, yes. So what we do is, so I've got a customer who's does bed and breakfasts in Norfolk in the UK, and so it's got bed and breakfasts in Cromer and parking in Cromer and things like that, and then other ones around as well. So he's coming around. He's coming up with this problem all of the time, and I'm trying to get him away from sitting there saying, right, every page has to be about bed and breakfast in the context of the town that you're in. Better is to say, right, this section is about Cromer. It's a town in Norfolk, sorry. So all of the content here in the schema we'll say it's about Cromer. All of these pages are about Cromer, but the individual pages are also about other things as well. So the schema helps to define that this page is about parking in Cromer because it's about parking and Cromer. But the internal linking then is about parking in the context of Cromer. So then a link will only go through to the parking in Cromer page if it is from a page that is talking about parking and is talking about Cromer on the same page. Otherwise, it'll go through to the parking in Norfolk, a Norwich page or whatever. So you don't need to try and get the word Cromer in every single link that's going to the parking in Cromer page. You just need to be talking about parking, and the system should pick up that it's in the context of Cromer and link it through to the parking in Cromer page. But you reinforce that by the schema on the page, which says this is about this, and it mentions this, and this, and we are more liberal with that. So we'll sit there and say we can understand that this page is, regardless of whatever links to it, this page is about these things and mentions these things. But these things that it mentions are subservient to the slaves to the master ideas in the about there. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's interesting you say, like, it's different for both having internal links there and also for schema as well, because I think Google doesn't necessarily have enough volume on every single query that exists in the world, but it might create it by scraping the structured data. So therefore you can actually create that demand for your brand or your topic by using that structured data, and that's a way to be able to leverage that.
Yeah, the way I see it now, and we're going a little bit away from internal links to schema, which is fine. But the way I see it is that Google is spending a lot of time now. When somebody types something into a search engine now, when the query comes in, Google is breaking that into entities before it starts. So if it sits there and says, I'm looking for a bed and breakfast in downtown Sydney or near Sydney Harbour Bridge, then it sees it's bed and breakfast. You're looking for it, so here's a search. It's Sydney. It's Sydney Harbour Bridge. It sees all those entities together, and it can sit there and say, right, we're looking for pages that are about these unique entities, and that's a lot easier for it to then match, because it's turned everything into numbers really, because all these entities have numbers. So you can sit there and say, right, I want to bring back the pages that have all of these numbers on them, and then it's got some kind of confidence level with those pages as well. So it's easier to make those matches for Google if it goes turns everything into entities before it starts. So that is certainly something that didn't happen 10 years ago when we all got involved in SEO. Sorry, 20 years ago when I got involved in SEO when Nick wasn't even born. That intermediary system wasn't happening, and it has to happen now because the web's too big. So Google basically, if it stores the whole world's information by ideas, there's actually hundreds of billions of ideas, but there's trillions and trillions of web pages. So there's a lot less concepts to understand than there are pages to understand. So it's better off having all the concepts as the main indexing methodology than it is having all the pages as the main indexing methodology.
But of course, that's with the structure that already does exist. Do you sort of see like, and especially maybe now thinking about big data, do you see some commonalities with maybe like the splitting down of, say, like intent? So like, say like you've got your transactional intent like driven pages, and like from putting them into these machine learning models, you're like, oh, okay, like I'm seeing them now split out into like, you know, various different types of like commercial or like informational intent. Like, do you sort of see that? And like, do you have any guidelines like from what you've seen, like, you know, more often, like, oh, okay, like this is kind of the amount, or this is like, I don't know, any sort of like there?
So we've been building some stuff, and I want to be careful not to talk about the stuff that we're hopefully going to come out with, because Fred has been, you know, sitting there dancing and getting people in the organisation to work out verbs and goodness knows what at the moment. I think most of the documentation, you know, the word to vex and a lot of the research papers on this talk about triples, and they talk about the idea of this affecting this, so sort of now, you know, entity verb entity kind of concept, and I think that's correct, but I think you can simplify that quite a lot. There's not much difference between asking for the price of something and wanting to buy something. That's materially the same kind of query that's going on there. So I think that there's a lot of value in not trying to, you know, write a page about price and why you should buy and overly working on the verbs so much, because I think that there are actually probably a less verbs that you need in the world than we might think in the English language. We kind of just repeat the same idea a lot. So synonyms become very, very useful, not just in terms of entities, but also synonyms of concepts, of verb concepts, become very useful in sort of just reducing the amount of actual intent that the user has. So the user is probably trying to do one of half a dozen things that you can work out pretty quickly. And I'm not saying I've got a perfect way of doing that, but we're working on it. So I saw Evad there pop up with a node edge node relationship. I do have a sort of I don't know if he's thinking about in exactly the same way as me, but I do think that where you haven't got an entity, you can usually blend two entity ideas together to come up with a page that's about two different entities intersecting, which is kind of interesting. So I haven't got a page about, you know, there is no entity for, I don't know, for Lovett Green where I live here, but there is an entity for the village that way and the village that way, and so I can sort of put those together or put it together and then sort of talk about houses or something like that. So I can come up with two separate entities which, when talked together, start to talk about an entity that isn't defined by Wikipedia or isn't defined by Google, but it helps to explain a new concept, at least to the machine learning. So it's a way of creating a topic when you haven't got an entity defined, which was a different question to the other one we had before. So I'll just stop again now.
And actually, to go back to Gregor Sandy's question, he's also posted a follow-up one here. That presumes there is a coverall page. What if you're a pub? Sorry, we are skipping a little bit back, so sorry.
Yeah, okay, yes, yeah.
What if you're a pub in Sussex called the Green Man's Arms versus a pub called the Sussex Arms, and you're trying to win the key phrase pub meals?
Okay.
So a very specific question.
Okay. Well, so that's fine. Basically, you are if the green man is lucky enough to have a Wikipedia page, then great. We're all good, really. You know, you just put the. So I've got a very squeaky chair. I'm sorry, it's probably getting picked up on the speaker. I've got to get some WD-40 on that. I think
Windex.
You only have one page on PubMills, basically. So you've got to do it within the context of your own website. So if you're the Sussex Arms, the Green Man's Arms, and you're talking about it, you've still only got one page on PubMills. You might have a page on your competitor, by the way, and Sussex Arms, and then you've got a page on the Sussex Arms say wonderful things about the Sussex Arms, but their pub food linked through to your pub food page is not as good as ours, you know. So you can use that, but you still only have one page about pub food. In answer to that, Gregor.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
In my humble opinion. Which
so there's another one from Peter. Do you want to bring that up, Nick? So the question is, how does topical linking affect external links? So website A is writing about search engines and links to website B about a specific search engine.
Okay, so now we're getting into my majestic one. I think topical links are still incredibly important. So the reason that internal links are important is because they're within your control ultimately. So you really should be doing your absolute best to get that context right. When a link comes into your web page, it's probably more dangerous when a link comes into your web page that is completely inappropriate. And I've seen some attempts at negative SEO with this, where people are sitting there putting blog comments with porn phrases all over them, linking through to somebody that they obviously don't like. I'll tell you, no, I won't mention it. It's a poor guy, an SEO in the UK, who's kind of getting that right now. Hasn't affected his rankings at all, by the way. So it didn't make a difference. Obviously, Google didn't trust it. But anyway, I think topical links are just as important for links coming into your website as they are from links internally. And they're more valuable, of course, because you don't have that control over them. So if they're a good link from a good site that's topically relevant, then that's a good, that will give you an extra external signal. So I see it because I can still think in terms of PageRank. I sit there and say, right, internal linking is crystallizing the topical authority, but external links coming in, when contextually appropriate, are giving my whole site more juice to flow around the system, and that's how I see it. And you don't have to do it mathematically. You can sit there and say, well, it's giving third party endorsement to your content, so that's great. So how does topical linking affect external links? Website today is talking about search engines. That's great, and then it wants to talk about Brave. Then it can link to Brave, and I think that's absolutely fine as long as you don't link to Brave when you're talking about Google or when you're talking about Bing. You kind of want to talk in context, because there's another part which we haven't talked about, which is passage indexing, which Google has been talking about for a while now. Something that Majestic has done for a while. It divides any web page into 40, so 5% of the text. So, and it works out where your links are on the page. And so the context and the words around that particular page, that section, are more relevant than arguably. I'm not saying that's within the Majestic algorithm at all, but arguably the words that are around that section of text are much more important than the words that are further away from that section of text. So the link is only relevant. It's not relevant necessarily for the whole content of the page, but it's relevant for that passage of text. So I think passage indexing is a very interesting phenomenon, which I had assumed that Google was already on top of before they started talking about passage indexing last year. But essentially, if you're going to be talking about a specific search engine, then of course link to that specific search engine. Of course, once you've got some content that is specifically about that search engine, better to link to your own web page about that search engine. And this is the 100%, everything you need to know guide about Brave. And so you can link to that instead and keep people on the site. So Search Engine Journal do that a lot. They're linking internally. And they may link externally when they haven't got content, but then there's a good chance they're going to write about that content soon and then put it in there and then link to that content instead, so that they can keep the authority and increase the authority within their website. So link out when it's appropriate, and if you haven't got a better page to link to internally.
Yeah, we're going to just tack on there. Like, it's funny you're saying all this, because what we've done with one of our clients is we're basically using I guess clustering all of the relevant topical clusters of keywords and making essentially hub pages, for vast section of stuff. And it's been really, really great. It's some of them started to start to rank for its secondary keywords. And now it's starting to get the primary keywords that we're really after. So essentially Google's seeing them as authority. And as soon as that started to happen with those main hub pages where all of basically those internal links are all pointing towards, those pages start to really get external links, essentially backlinks attributed to that quite naturally, because that's just where all of the information was. So that was seen as a really good page to be able to link to. And we didn't do any work to get these links, and it was quite successful.
It's interesting you say that, because I think it's very interesting. A lot of people try and robots.txt or remove the category pages from WordPress sites, which I think is insane, absolutely insane thing to do, because that is where the authority is for the category, which is probably the topic definition. So I think what is a much better idea, and I used to have one, I don't right now, but I want a plugin. Actually, I want a theme that allows my category page to have a static bit of text at the top, so that I can have my static text on the top, and that will allow me to optimize that for that category, and then the articles that are about that category are underneath there. And I'm sure there's plugins that do that, and there should be themes that do that. But I'm amazed that it's not by default in WordPress.
WordPress has a feature for that. So I think the category description by itself does that.
Yeah, but it doesn't. But it doesn't by default. In most themes, that description will then not appear at the top of the page. And if it does, the description is often text only. It's text driven, so it's not rich. It's not a page. At
the back end, you can actually change that. So I'm pretty sure it accepts HTML in there. So you can add that in, and that will kind of come up there.
Yeah, it's worth doing though. It's worth spending the time to focus on that, and whether you can get it so you can use Gutenberg, the block editor, or whatever on your category pages to really make that page into a really decent hub of information.
I think it's a very, very powerful and obvious technique that just isn't out of the box in WordPress, something we should all be doing.
Yeah, I guess like the default in WordPress is kind of annoying. It's just it'll have its category page, and then it might have all these posts related to that, and then it's just got all of its pagination. It just turns into a really annoying kind of structure that it just by default creates. Elementor Pro, if you played around with that, that's actually a good way to kind of do that, because essentially it allows you to take over your WordPress category pages as just normal pages. So which means you don't have to break WordPress to do dodgy redirects and category pages, because essentially you just have it in your slugs, and you can be able to take the category pages, build proper hub pages, and it's just it's been really quite awesome.
Yeah, I've got a site up now with Elementor Pro on it. It's the first time we used Elementor Pro. It's a little bit it slows the site up a bit, doesn't it? It's maybe me, I haven't got it sorted right. I mean, the content's not up properly yet, but
speed's always a big speed's always a big issue, isn't it? I mean,
with any of the builders, I guess it will be it's trying to do something that WordPress is not generally built to do. So it has got all these extra scripts that it has to load to kind of fit everything together.
Yeah.
So
but I think that's okay. That's the right way to do it, because you just take in the scripts that you need. It's just, I'm surprised that one hasn't been done by
there default. Are plugins for that too. So it's just that for everything you just need to use another plugin. So then you have 50 different plugins now, and that makes it slower now.
Yeah,
So you gotta go find another plugin for that.
And then you don't know the security of that plugin either. So, as soon as you get to a proper company or a NASDAQ company, they've got all this issue with every plugin you put in is a massive headache.
Yeah, actually, Peter, I'll just like quickly talk about this because I think we're getting a little off topic, but using like CDNs like Cloudflare to like with WordPress, like make optimizations, like they're that's actually something that you showed me with turning it on and off. It's like, wow, it's actually really, really cool.
Oh yeah, it's fun to play around with, and I mean, definitely for WordPress. I mean, I think actually Aleda, she pointed this out. She, the new, well, it's not new now, but the feature in Cloudflare for the auto optimize for WordPress, and I saw a tweet from Aleda, and she was, wow, this site's so fast now, and better pay attention to this. And dug around in there, and definitely the speed is definitely a lot faster for a WordPress site using the auto optimize. And so that's definitely something to check it out. If obviously we're getting away from the internal linking topic, but it's certainly worth trying that out if you are having trouble trying to speed up your WordPress site.
If you're going to do that, there's one danger with internal links and using JavaScript for it, because some of the optimization techniques, so WP Optimize crunches all of the JavaScript files and things, and that can mess up Index's internal link system, for example. So then the links don't show. It's just a couple of buttons in the settings to fix, but one of the things they do to try and make everything fast seems to be to crunch everything, minimize everything, and cache everything, which means that you've got to hope that there wasn't anything in the background that they missed, really. So heaviest possible flare. Off we go.
Actually, you reminded me of the question that I think I put in our private chat first, which was like when you were talking about like JavaScript injected internal links. Of course I'm the person that's just like, isn't that like by default client side rendered? Like others server side rendered links?
Yeah, no, it is client side rendered. But now Google is using Google Chrome to basically pass and render all the content so that it sees the rendered version of the content and then puts that into its browser, not the raw source code. So view source has become a very old way of looking at the code. You want to always look at the inspect tool rather than the view source tool, because there's so much other stuff that's going in.
Yeah, ever since like Evergreen Googlebot, like JavaScript things can work well from an SEO point. Like ideally, it's still like client side. Like there are changes that Google will pick up late if it's in JavaScript, whereas like if it's directly in their source, it picks it up faster. But it's not like what it used to be like 5 years ago, where they never see it.
That's true. I was lucky enough to be in Switzerland for a Google Webmaster conference, and Martin Splitz was talking about this, and I think I've done a blog post on it, so I'll try and get the blog post and put it into the chat whilst we're talking. Really.
Yeah, awesome. Do you guys have any other questions, or are we so safe to sort of bookend it here?
Well, I mean, how are we going for time, Nick? How much more time have we got?
7:30. It's 7:38. Look, I think like there's no hard and fast rule. I just like to figure out where it's like a natural sort of like conclusion to a conversation. And I don't really see any new questions. And to be honest, like I think like all of us really, really appreciate like the wonderful like work that you've done in search, like particularly with Interlinks. So I think it's a phenomenal tool, and it has so much like potential and like wonderful application to so many people. And I have so many more questions, but at the same time, I'm just very mindful that you've got the rest of your day ahead of you.
Right. I've done my sales job for the day now, so I'm all right. I put that link into private chat. I don't know if you can put it into the main chat. I can't chat in the main.
I've just dropped it in. I've just dropped it into the.
Perfect.
live feed.
But thank you very much for bringing me on. I've thoroughly enjoyed it in spite of the fact that I had to get up, all of 10 minutes early to get here. So, thanks very much.
Dixon Jones,
So what's the best way for people to? Oh, sorry, Nick. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Like, Twitter.
If you want to get in touch with Inlinks, then we have a free version. So I just do that for a start. Inlinks.net and sign up for the free version, or give us money. Obviously, you can do that. What I would say is, if you can't just go onto the site and get the free trial, you've got to do the demo. So because honestly, we were finding so many people signing up, trying it for a month and thinking, what, I don't get it. And a 30-minute demo just goes, oh, it's not just about internal links. It's not just about seeing more. They sit there and see the whole thing going and seeing that it's not the most important thing. In fact, Peter, about, we did a demo, I think 2 years ago, and then things have changed a lot since then. And we did another one a couple of months ago as well. And
yes.
And I think second time round it made a lot more sense, hopefully, because our UX was probably a bit crap 2 years ago, to be honest with you. But anyway,
it's definitely improved a lot. But I think there's a lot you can learn. I mean, even for people just to sign up and do the trial, because the whole sort of entity schema, internal linking, semantic piece starts formulating in your mind a lot more. So I would say to people, that's definitely one reason to give it a try.
And the other thing I'd suggest people do is, if they go to Google and type in, I don't know if it works in Australia, maybe someone can try it, type in entity SEO training. I'm kind of hoping that my Udemy course gets near the top, or either my Inlinks page or my Udemy course is near the top. But I've got a free entity SEO training course, it's there, or semantic SEO for content writers.
Yeah, Inlinks come on first, and then we've got Udemy after that.
Hey, and the whole course was around writing that article that was at number one for that phrase. So I'm very glad that it's now number one, because if it wasn't anywhere, then my whole course was going to be pointless. So that's good. So that's a pretty good way of having a look and understanding how to do SEO from an entity perspective instead of keyword perspective. And if you want to find me, dixonjones.com, well, you've got a link there anyway, so you can see that. So that's good. Cool.
Thank you so much, Dixon. Thank you, Saijo. Thank you, Peter, for your time. For everyone, thank you so much for tuning in with us. Again, find Dixon Jones with inlinks.net, and of course, reach out to him if you've got any other questions and things like that. So thank you so much, guys. And subscribe.
Thanks to everyone with the questions. SEO Collective, rock on.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.